Hello and welcome back to another video. If you're looking for recommendations on what manhwa to read, then here are some that I've read recently that might be of interest. Manhwa titles are timestamped in the video for your convenience. Our first manhwa for today is The Fox-Eyed Villain of the Demon Academy, a fantasy manhwa that I've currently read up to chapter 45 on. Its main character is Nam Woo-hyun, an author living in modern-day Korea who finds himself reincarnated into the world of a novel that he wrote. However, instead of being a protagonist or an extra, he ends up possessing one of the villains, specifically Asen Adel. And what's worse, he becomes Asen right when he's being pursued by the humans due to his villainous actions in the realm. To escape, he jumps into a portal that sends him to the demon world. Hopefully here, he can survive and get a sense of what's happening around him and to him. Time for an author to adapt in the world that he seemingly created. The story is 7 out of 10. Starting off with a bang, then tapering off to be more of a slow-paced story, the key events are spaced out with the focus being heavily on the growth required for Asen in the world that he now inhabits, hopefully stealing a lot of the events from the original novel that he wrote. Nothing extraordinary at this point, but it does have a good potential moving forward. The characters are 8 out of 10. The humans and demons being in conflict and living in two different realms isn't a new concept. But I do enjoy the personifications of the 7 deadly sins and how they're noble houses in the demon realm. It makes me curious if they did something similar though for the human side, which hasn't been explored that much yet. The art is also 8 out of 10. Due to Asen's nature and being a villain from a novel, the aura and killing intent are much more dark compared to the usual lighter tones or hues that are attached to protagonists. Mix that with the depiction of his character having the fox-like eyes, which is portrayed aptly, makes even people around him a little more wary. So if you enjoy fantasy manhwas where the author reincarnates into their own novel like Housemaid's Youngest from my previous videos, then The Fox-Eyed Villain of the Demon Academy may just be to your tastes. This next manhwa to take a look at is the Necromancer family's Young Master, a fantasy manhwa that I've currently read up to chapter 46 on. The protagonist of this tale is Leon von Marbas, the young heir of the Marbas household, a family infamous for necromancy in their world. To Leon's and the family's misfortune though, there hasn't been a talented necromancer born into their family since their founding patriarch, and so it's been on a constant decline to the point that Leon has had to be the executioner of his own father. Now, as the new heir, he discovers the Necronomicon, an heirloom of the family, and meets Marbas, the demon that the patriarch and all house heads made a pact with. It is now his turn though to take the mantle, and his potential has the trajectory of being greater than even that of the founder. OP Necromancy starts now. The story is 8 out of 10. The protagonist being a part of a failing household and tasked with bringing it back to its heyday is a common enough trope. Of course, he's blessed with overwhelming talent, but still requires time to actually reach that full potential. And that gives at least some overarching motivation, direction, and conflict to be somewhat more engaging. The characters are also 8 out of 10. Leon himself is quite the seemingly emotionless and stoic individual. Considering the trauma he's been through, it's understandable to a degree. Weirdly enough though, he's interesting because he still has a sense of duty and responsibility to the Marbas name and land, including its people, which is a little weird considering his initial depiction. The art is 7 out of 10. Considering the backdrop, a more dark tone utilizing colors such as black and purple is what you would expect, and compared to other necromancy titles, this one seems to be more on the serious side as well, although only time will tell. So if you enjoy fantasy manhwas with necromancers as the focus, similar to Necromancer Academy and the Genius Summoner from my previous videos, then fans of the genre should start reading the Necromancer family's Young Master. To support 8 It All is one of our shorter manhwas for this week. It's a fantasy manhwa that I've carried up to chapter 22 on. Kim Ho is the name of its main character, a dedicated individual living in the modern world. He was obsessed with a particular game that he utilized all potential characters by raising their rank or power to S rank. He gets prompted though to do an EX or extra version, I think, of the game. The catch though, he's playing it himself now. Living and breathing in the world that he beat so many times, what will he do with this newfound life? For now, it's time to gather strength, because he plans on becoming a supporter, a role in most games or worlds that don't do much combat-wise, but in his case is able to do everything, supposedly. A true all-rounder of classes. Okay, you have my attention for now. The potential is 7 out of 10. Kim Ho being such an addict for a game is not an uncommon sight to see, but his role in being a support and also being able to do other things is ambitious, to say the least. I'm prepping myself for more of an overpowered potential, but it needs time to actually grow in that direction for now. The art is also 7 out of 10. As of right now, with only 22 chapters, it's really only scratched the surface of what situations it could present itself with, which as of right now is mostly consisted of gathering allies, gathering strength in an academy or school life setting, and showing off just how much knowledge and potential Kim Ho truly has. So if you're a fan of fantasy manhwas centered around academy life, at least for now, but has some potential to be more of an overpowered all-rounder character, then the support aided all has some promise that may prove fruitful later on. Our other shorter manhwa for this week is The Marquis is the Martial Archduke, a reincarnation manhwa that I've currently read up to chapter 18 on. The focus of this plot is on Urine Rocks, or more like an individual who reincarnated or possessed the body of Urine Rocks, a character from the novel that he was writing. Of course, as an author and our protagonist, he gets himself acclimated somewhat quickly, but is able to see a status window right in front of him when he reincarnates. And in this status window is where he sees the true mix-up. It seems to be the case that he can learn the Sichuan Tang clan arts. And for those unfamiliar with Mura manhwas, they're typically known for poison arts and hidden weapons. And this is no different in this particular weird mix of genres. With martial arts-based powers in a fantasy setting, time for Urine to overthrow the original concepts from the novel and see what lies in front of him. The potential is 8 out of 10. Fantasy world mixed with Muram combat powers is something that is more uncommon, and I can think of only one other manhwa that I've covered that uses this trope, namely Descended from Divinity from my previous videos. So if you ended up liking that one, for now, this manhwa also seems to have that type of potential. The art is 7 out of 10. Due to the limited chapter set, it hasn't given me enough of an indication if things will be necessarily good or bad. At this point, just the fact that the Tan Clan hidden weapon martial art exists in this fantasy world, I'm curious on how that will affect this world made by Urine though. So if you think that the fantasy foundation of something like God Tier Extra's Ultimate Guide mixed with the more martial arts genre that we get from Descended from Divinity, then the Marquis is the Martial Archduke has some promise that could be interesting as it develops. Welcome to the highlight portion of today's video. Our highlight today is Peaceful Camping Life in Another World, which I've now read up to chapter 76 on. Info card description will have links to my original opinion. Lee Gang-hyun is of course our main character. A star chef in modern Korea, he, due to some pressures and stress, ended up losing his sense of taste and escaped to the countryside home of his grandfather to recuperate. What he ends up finding though was a portal to a fantasy world, and it wasn't a one-way portal either. Going to and fro, Gang-hyun experiences a lot actually, from meeting other humans, beastmen, and elves, traveling to their respected lands and homes, to, on the complete flip side, get closer with the villagers from the rural village he now lives in. Overall, Gang-hyun is actually finding satisfaction with this newer, slower lifestyle of his, and it actually shows, since he's been able to regain his sense of taste and not hurrying back to Seoul, but instead basking in the present. A slow healing manhwa, for sure. My previous scores for this manhwa were 8 out of 10 for potential and 7 out of 10 for art. The potential translates to an 8 out of 10 for story, as there is some semblance of a story. However, due to the naturally slow pace and slice of life nature, it takes ages to truly get anything developed in its storyline. What does get some exploration though over 76 chapters is some of the fantasy world that Gang-hyun found himself in. It also begs the question though, did the grandfather originate or come from the fantasy world, or did he just stumble upon it too? The characters though are 9 out of 10. As they're the true highlight in this title. We get to see so many interactions, developments, especially for Gang-hyun, and even those of the villagers and people that visit him, and it's a fun time for sure. The cherry on top is that even the characters from the fantasy world get some highlight actually. You have to just give it some time as well. The art though moves up to 9 out of 10, with a caveat. If you were expecting some sort of action rendition here, I apologize, it didn't land that way compared to what I said before. Instead, it leaned more heavily towards its slice-of-life foundation while relying on the characters to keep the reader's attention. The only satisfying part is really the character portrayals, Kang Hyun's cooking, and the variety of scenes Kang Hyun experiences in both a modern and fantasy setting. Peaceful camping life in another world is truly that. A peaceful manhwa that doesn't look to have intense action or combat scenes to drive the narrative. Instead, it lets the characters live their lives and take things slowly. It echoes some elements from resigning and healing in another world from my previous videos if that was to your liking. Would you agree, or would you not? Comment down below your thoughts on peaceful camping life in another world. Thanks so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. Write down in the comment section down below what manhwa you've been reading and I might just take a look. Till next time though, have a good read.